Good morning on what is a mild, grey and overcast day. It is Friday the 11th of November. I've got a nice hot cup of tea. And a big box to open. So let's get the knife on it. Keeping the cat, who is not ours, his nose out of the way because he does like to take an interest in what I'm doing. That's that. There we go. So, the first thing I'm going to pull out of this is The Legend of Luther Arkwright, with an introduction by Adrian Traskowski, and it's by Byran Talbot. And no, teeth off me, thank you very much. Sorry, cat, who is not ours, is being very insistent that I give him a fuss. I have been giving him a fuss, but I've got this unboxing to do. So, The Legend of Luther Arkwright. The Adventures of Luther Arkwright, first serialised in 1978, is widely considered to be the first British graphic novel. Praised by many writers and artists, including Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Jean Giraud, Moebius, and Michael Moorcock, this groundbreaking experimental adult sci-fi story was a seminal work, inspiring and influencing many comic creators. Its sequel, Heart of Empire, was published in 2001. Both books have been continually in print since then they first published. Set 50 years later, The Legend of Luther Arkwright is another standalone story, while still maintaining total continuity with the Arkwright mythos. It is a different kind of adult adventure, pursued across multiple historically divergent parallel worlds, both utopian and dystopian, and facing a far superior adversary. Arkwright battles to save humanity from mass destruction. His only edge is his experience and force of will. The Legend of Luther Arkwright, beautifully drawn by master storyteller and Eisner Award-winning comics creator Byran Talbot, is a milestone in British comics history. So this is not a collection of Luther Arkwright, it's a new volume in the series, basically the third volume. Now, I have been a fan of Luther Arkwright since 1984, when in issue 14 of Imagine magazine, there was an article devoted to Luther Arkwright and the background of the comic, and also a scenario written for both Traveller and Star Frontiers, and very good it was too. And that would, I've been a fan since then. I later saw copies of Psst magazine, where I read the opening issues of the comic strip. And in terms of role-playing, there will be a role-playing game from Parallel Games, or 23rd Parallel Games, I believe, which wasn't very successful. But the design mechanism has since done a Mythras version of the game. Now, the original Luther Arkwright comic would be completed through Eagle Comics, brought all together. Luther Arkwright's, basically Byran Talbot's artwork, what you may well have seen also in Pages of 2000 AD and Nemesis the Warlord, and it's highly detailed, and this is just sort of like basically an piece. It's not nearly as sort of like scratchy as this. That's not a criticism, but it's a different style to what we would normally see from Byran Talbot. But here we have basically Luther Arkwright in his classic pose. And here with the introduction by Adrian Traskowski. Before we get into the story itself, dedication to Lee Harris, publisher of the first Luther Arkwright story, The Papist Affair, written in 1976, was quite a gonzo affair, in comparison to what would come later. So here we have basically the opening section, and again, it's quite. This is undeniably an adult comic. So, and here you can actually sort of kind of see the Giro, the Mobius influences in this piece there. I think that. Here we go. There's just more basically the opening sections of the first chapter. The artwork is different. I think it's much, to a certain extent, it's much looser, less clearly defined. There's kind of almost just really tightly defined artwork in the previous issues, I think. And so basically, it is of an adult nature. Let's see what else we've got in here. And here we have a slightly different style again. I think essentially what I presume he's basically doing is different styles for different parallels, and that's a nice touch. It makes it a bit easier to view and read. And probably that is yeah, that's in New Amsterdam. So I mean, basically we are dealing with certain degree psionics and precognition and events across parallel worlds, sort of controlled by, opposed by the disruptors. And Luther Arkwright is a singular being able to leap between these parallels. And this perhaps is probably more in the style of the original Luther Arkwright. A lot more detailed, a lot more hatching. And that potentially is Harry Fairfax. I think is one of the characters from the original stories. Without having a closer look. Yeah. That was fantastic. The story's going to be good too. So, yeah, I mean, essentially, this is sort of bringing, the Luther Arkwright story onwards, updating it, seeing what he's doing 50 years on, from essentially having, in the original story, having saved the universe from the effects of the disruptors. The disruptors attempt to take control of all the parallels, and they bred Luther himself for the very purpose as their agent, able to freely cross from one to the other. And there's antecedents in here for sort of like for steampunk, and sort of like cross-parallel adventures, very much sort of like the Oswald Bastable stories for Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion. And we have constant parallels, across them, so similarities between one parallel and another, where the Roman Empire might still be going but it's slightly different, or the Prussian Empire is dominant but for one reason or another. And so that's got kind of difficult here. So sort of like we've got different newspapers, and presumably they are from different time period, different parallels, as you can see here, different headlines. But it's very sort of like wrapped up in sort of ultimately the core comic itself is sort of like British parallels. So the majority of the first story kind of takes place on one where Cromwell's protectorate has been maintained throughout history, and the monarchy was never restored. So you have a very Puritan empire, and you don't have the sort of development that came with the restoration of the empire, or a restoration of the monarchy. So yeah, all very different. So yeah, it's fantastically drawn. It's a superb, really great artwork. It's going to be a good story. Here we have a figure right out of history by Rose Wild. So it's a lot of time in, a lot of the history and so on. All the way through to the end, and I won't spoil that for you. So yeah, that is Legend of Luther Arkwright, basically The Adventures of Luther Arkwright, Volume 3. Written and drawn by Byran Talbot. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing of the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings of the Nook, where you'll see me out here. Sorry, Cat, I need to get this box. Thank you. With a box, which I'm going to try and put down past the cat. Thank you. Containing a book or game, which I'll unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so. All, of course, accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. And a cat who is not ours. Then please do hit that subscribe button down below. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.